Part 69. I'm Really Immortal. Author, Chulian Kuikan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 705. Lu Chang'an didn't expect that his name was not Xiaguancan, and he was a little surprised. He actually remembered the other person's name wrongly. This must be a very rare thing. After all, he has always been gentle and polite to others. He couldn't help but feel guilty if he remembered the wrong name. It is also a manifestation of self-cultivation. Last time I went to Linan with An Nuan, we met these people. They seemed to know you. They even took your photo to identify An Nuan. Lu Chang'an sat down and looked at the legs beside him leaning together. Together, Qin Yinan was flipping through a newspaper carelessly in his hand. After getting off the car, she had already put on high heels, which made her calves look particularly slender. Unlike An Nuan, whose hamstrings were so long that it seemed like she had no calves at all, Qin Yinan's legs had a soft feel that was more suitable for being wrapped in black stockings. More in line with most men's preference for female lines. Normally, I like to think of myself as a pregnant woman, but when it comes to being so beautiful, I selectively forget that pregnant women are not suitable for wearing high heels. What did they ask, and how did An Nuan answer? Qin Yinan raised his head with some interest. Women's focus is always so different. Shouldn't it be time to see who seems to know you? They took out the photo and asked An Nuan if he recognized the person in the photo. An Nuan said, "This is my boyfriend's cousin." Although Lu Chang'an was looking through the book that described the detailed information on the transactions between men and women behind the prosperity of the city in the early 20th century. But I still heard the conversation at that time. The corners of Qin Yinan's mouth curled up slightly, and she adjusted her elegant ladle-like sitting posture. She put her left leg on her right leg and swayed slightly. She looked at her toes, tapped her knees with her fingers, and showed an expected smile. The little girl's movie is full of messed up thoughts. What are you thinking? If it were anyone else, Lu Chang'an would certainly not pay attention to what other people were thinking, but he was still willing to understand his girlfriend and his sister, who was also very emotionally close to him. Isn't this obvious? Qin Yinan suspected that in Lu Chang'an's eyes, An Nuan was really as pure as a delicate little lotus folded from white paper, and would not think much about An Nuan's ubiquitous scheming. She first explained that you are her boyfriend, explain your identity label and affiliation, and your relationship with her, and then explain your relationship with me. I mean, don't get me wrong. This woman has no ambiguous relationship with my boyfriend. Don't say too much. Think. You're overthinking it. They don't know me at all, and they don't know if I know you. How could An Nuan suspect that they misunderstood my relationship with you? Lu Chang'an really didn't hear the meaning behind it. Is it necessary to suggest these things to complete strangers? I didn't think too much about it. Under normal circumstances, if someone asks her if she knows me, wouldn't it be enough if she says yes or no? Is it necessary to introduce the relationship between her boyfriend and the person in the photo to a stranger? Qin Yinan shook. She shook her head. It's because you think too little. A little girl like An Nuan has a lot on her mind. She just wants to let as many people as possible know that you are her boyfriend, no matter whether it is useful or not. You just her boyfriend. Maybe in the future when others see you and me together, they will have an idea. Look, that person is An Nuan's boyfriend we met last time, and the one next to him is his cousin, not his daughter friend. I have no ambiguous relationship with him. Lu Chang'an opened his mouth slightly and fell into deep thought. You see, her tricks are not useless, and they came into effect today. She told the three people just now last time, didn't you meet them again today? Qin Yinan then raised his head and glanced at the other end of the waiting room. Three people, what they were thinking just now was the message An Nuan conveyed to them. Oh, they met this man again, and his girlfriend didn't come. Although the woman next to him is good looking and has a good figure, she is just the man's cousin. Lu Chang'an cupped his hands, fully expressing their admiration. I understand. I also have ways to counter her, but I won't do that. Qin Yinan tugged on his sleeves, leaned over and looked at him, and said softly, "Am I good?" The charm of a girl and the shyness of a mature woman have always been the beauty of the heart. In fact, coquettishness is not just for girls. While maintaining a delicate and elegant image, a mature woman occasionally shows her coquettish appearance, which is always particularly pleasing to the eye. What's more, Qin Yinan is actually Yesijin. Is a beautiful woman that Lu Chang'an thinks can be ranked alongside An Nuan. Be good, be good. Lu Chang'an raised his hand and pressed Qin Yinan's head, recalling briefly, "You are good today, but you might as well give in before." "I remembered something, that day you had a leak." "I didn't." Qin Yinan's cheeks turned red. What he was talking about was that he sent wild boar meat that day, and An Nuan's follower also came over. Qin Yinan spent a little effort and successfully let An Nuan stay overnight. At the same time, he tried to use his mature woman to stunning. An Nuan's body was attacked by dimensionality reduction, but something went wrong and he suddenly became abnormal and his body became much slimmer. Even so, it is much better than An Nuan's mediocre one. The most important thing, Qin Yinan thought that everyone had a tacit agreement not to remind the other person of what happened that night, because he wanted to suddenly run into the hot spring room while she was playing in the water. It was Yesijin who played in the water, not Qin Yinan. This was also the consensus reached by everyone at the time. Lu Chang'an said it himself, "Jinner did it, not Miss Xionan." Regardless of whether he believed it or not, she believed it anyway. "Okay, you didn't." The next morning, An Wen got up to make breakfast and found that there were steaks, chow cold noodles, defrosted instant steamed buns, fried dumplings, bone soup and rice noodles, and yogurt and milk in the refrigerator. "She thinks you are ridiculing her. Do you really mean that?" Lu Chang'an felt that since An Nuan has so many little thoughts, knows herself and the enemy so well, and Qin Yinan, who is well aware of An Nuan's little thoughts, must also be a master in this area, thinking have to verify it. That day, An Nuan saw so much breakfast in the refrigerator, and she immediately became furious. Qin Yinan's cheeks were still pink. She didn't know if he simply mentioned breakfast, or if he also remembered seeing her playing with water the night before. No, seeing Yesijin playing with water. "Tell me what you are doing while blushing and peeking at me." The night before that morning, everyone agreed that it was my Jinner who ran away. "Why are you blushing like this and feeling guilty?" Lu Chang'an said with a smile. In fact, even if they are not a couple, relationship, without that aspect of thinking, men will still think that a beautiful woman blushing shyly is a pleasing thing to look at. You still said that." Qin Yinan quickly raised her palm to cover one of her cheeks, and quickly answered his question to divert the embarrassment and shame. "Of course it's just to show off my cooking skills, show off my ability to live at home, and let her know she still has a lot to learn. Otherwise, no matter how hospitable the host is, there is no need to prepare so many kinds of breakfast." Lu Chang'an shook his head mockingly. There were times when he was naive. At that time, he thought that An Nuan was overthinking. These women, when talking to them about business matters, reasoning, doing work, living and studying, may not have much ability. Strong, once the two people get together and start scheming, Lu Chang'an can't help but suspect that his sister and girlfriend are Zhujiang and Sima Yi. "I'm just a little short of giving enough rewards to update the extra chapter. I've already started writing it. When it's enough, I'll release it. At the same time, I'll update the sequel chapter 17. I'm really immortal." Author, Chulian Kuikan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 706. After chatting for a while, the announcement was announced that the ticket check-in time was coming soon. Lu Chang'an and Qin Yinan left the business waiting room. The huge station was very deserted, and it felt so empty that the sound of heavier footsteps would echo everywhere. There were more staff than passengers who were still maintaining the operation of the station. There were less than 10 people at the ticket gate for the train Lu Chang'an and Qin Yan'an took. When they got down to the platform, the business seats for this train were at the front of the train. Lu Chang'an looked at the people standing on the train. The steward, who was wearing a silk scarf and smiling at the door, turned to look at the other end of the platform. A few rays of sunlight leaked out of the sky, which made him feel extra cold. The heavy snow that covered the sky 2 days ago actually dissipated in just one morning. 7 or 8. The two sat down, and the flight attendant brought hot orange juice and snacks. Lu Chang'an opened the food box, ate the chocolate inside, and looked out the window. Although the high-speed rail was convenient, it was not practical to stay in a confined space for a long time. Not as comfortable as walking. Lu Chang'an squinted his eyes. He was not sleepy. Although he only slept for 3 to 4 hours last night, it did not affect his energy at all. He just felt that it would be easier to pass the time after sleeping. I didn't sleep well last night, and I feel like sleeping now, Qin Yan'an said to Lu Chang'an next to him. Let's sleep together. Lu Chang'an closed his eyes. There were only 2 of them in the carriage. The steward would naturally come to remind him when he arrived at the station. There was no need to worry about passing the station. Lu Chang'an thought of the green leather car that clanged and clanged in the past. It was common for him to sit across the station. Once he fell asleep. When he woke up, the old farmer who was sitting opposite and carrying a snakeskin bag of mountain goods got off the car. He was replaced by a farmer with thick braids and a green military cap. The little girl is a little thin, but her eyes are big and shining. I had a good chat with that little girl at that time, but a few years later I saw her on TV, singing a folk song from southern Hunan, showing off her beautiful singing voice in front of people all over the country. It's been a long time since I watched the Spring Festival Gala. Lu Chang'an was thinking about all this and felt his arm being hugged. He turned around and saw Qin Yan'an had closed her eyes, her cheek pressed against his arm, showing a comfortable look. Expression. How can I sleep with you like this? Lu Chang'an twitched his arm, but did not pull it out. It seemed that he had already known that he would be like this, and her arm was tightly grasped by her. Although they are 2 seats close to each other, unlike the second-class seats and the first-class seats, there is only a hand rest in the middle. Lu Chang'an couldn't help but think about an interesting question, being beaten with a small fist and sleeping with someone holding his arms. Which of the 2 experiences is better? Let me hold him. Qin Yan'an still pressed her cheek against his arm, raised her head and looked at him and blinked, then lowered her head and hugged him tighter. Acting like a baby is becoming more and more natural. Women can act like a baby. It just depends on whether there is someone willing to act like a baby to him. Once there is such a partner, the woman will be very happy when she acts like a spoiled child, and the person being spoiled is often very happy as well. Go to sleep. Lu Chang'an reached out with his other hand, patted her head, and then closed his eyes. Qin Yan'an nodded. In fact, sometimes she felt that the feeling of wanting to rely on him and acting coquettishly toward him when she saw him should be the remnants of her past memories. Those emotions represented the intimate past between Yesijin and him. Brother, Qin Yan'an called softly. How do you feel when you get along with your Jin'er? Qin Yan'an asked with her eyes closed. Forget. Qin Yan'an raised her head slightly and looked at him in disbelief. It was clear that that night he held her in his arms, leaped all the way from Yuelu Mountain, and stood on the roof of Bailong Center. When he overlooked Junsha, his moist eyes were hidden. The longing that had been in her heart for so long but had no place to express convinced her that Yesijin was the person he loved most. You are Yesijin. When you remember, you don't need to ask me. Lu Chang'an smiled. Don't you want to sleep? Do you want me to imitate the clatter of a train before you sleep? Was Yesijin like this before? Qin Yan'an asked delicately. If so, then she should be like this too. No, it's a Nuan. Qin Yan'an gave him a roll of her eyes, dropped her arm, and turned her back to him. Lu Chang'an patted her shoulder, inserted his fingers into her hair, and scratched her scalp. Just as he was about to close his eyes, Qin Yan'an turned around again, glared at him fiercely with her lips pursed, and then turned to him. He grabbed his arm and hugged her, and continued to sleep with his pillow on it. Lu Chang'an also fell asleep. Arriving at Jinling in the evening, Lu Chang'an woke up just before arriving at the station. The flight attendant came to wake him up. Lu Chang'an took off Qin Yan'an's blanket and returned it to the flight attendant, and then pushed Qin Yan'an awake. Qin Yan'an's cheeks were slightly red, and she felt extremely comfortable while sleeping with his scent. She also had a beautiful dream, which made Qin Yan'an really jealous. That little girl in Nuan didn't know how many times she slept with him. After leaving the station, I walked for a while before meeting the driver who picked him up. It was different from the last time Lu Chang'an came. The car drove around in front of the house and came to the east. Qin Yan'an explained to Lu Chang'an that in this old Qin family's house, only part of the courtyard is usually in use, and most of the other courtyards and attics are closed. During the spring festival, Qin Peng will live in the backyard, leaving the front yard for reception. The guests are completely separated from the backyard. Most people don't know that they can't see Qin Peng if they go to the front yard. The car stopped in front of the screen wall. Qin Yan'an saw Lu Chang'an standing still after getting off the car, just looking at the simple and carved screen wall, and couldn't help but ask, "What's good to see?" "When you and Qin Peng were young, I taught you the Analects of Confucius," Jishi here Lu Chang'an said with some emotion. "At that time, you didn't want to study with the old master, so I took you around to see what happened. Wherever you can tell illusions, tell stories and the principles in the stories. If you are willing to learn, you will grow faster, so later I asked the old master to teach the children of the side branch, and I will teach you to read, write, and understand." "Why are we talking about Ji's family here?" Qin Yan'an came over, held Lu Chang'an's palm, and raised his head with eyes that were waiting for explanation. "Was it like this when you were a child?" At that time, she should have been a more petite girl, with the honest and strong Qin Peng by her side. Because it is a screen, it is called a xia wall. The xia wall that caused the disaster is a screen. The xia wall was originally a screen used by the king of Lu. When ministers came to the screen, they had to tidy up their disguises and show respect. There is a sentence in the Analects of Confucius, "Those who have a country and a family are not worried about being few but about inequality, they are not worried about poverty but being uneasy." This sentence has a great impact on both you and Qin Peng. Let's go. Lu Chang'an patted Qin Yan'an on the shoulder. The importance of education is that a lot of knowledge may not make people take it to heart or remember it in their hearts, but there is often that sentence that starts to guide a person's thoughts and guide him to think. To change, to work hard, will change a person's life. Qin Yan'an nodded. It was a pity. It would have been great if Qin Peng had found Lu Chang'an when he was 5 or 6 years old and sent him to her side. Thinking of this, Qin Yan'an thought of Zhou Dongdong, but it would be particularly difficult for Lu Chang'an to repeat the process of teaching and educating people in front of Zhou Dongdong, because Zhou Dongdong seemed not interested in anything other than eating. Interested, I don't know how he usually teaches Zhou Dongdong. Thinking that such a powerful person would be helplessly dominated by Zhou Dongdong, Qin Yan'an couldn't help but smile. By the way, there was also Shang Guandandan who always wanted him to call his mother, and he was also someone he had no easy way to deal with. The two people stood in front of the screen wall for a while, and then continued to walk forward. There was still a long way ahead, a long bridge, and a square of bricks and stones. As soon as Lu Chang'an and Qin Yan'an walked to the bridge, they saw the door in front of them opened, and a man with white beard and hair. The old man was standing on the top of the square, looking forward eagerly. He stretched his neck and looked here, his eyes full of anxious anticipation. There were several guards standing next to him, who were complaining that the old man had to climb up the stool even though he was more than 100 years old. Like facing a formidable enemy. I've had a cold in the past few days. Well, it's just a routine cold. It's not a new coronavirus infection. The rice noodle shop is also closed. Maitwan is also hungry. I don't know what to do. Currently, the group has updated White Fennel 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and other girls' extras. You are welcome to read them. There is only about 500 rewards left before the extras can be updated. Business has gone out, so I can only survive by writing some extras. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I'm really immortal. Author, Chulian Kuikan Rusiahua. Chapter 707. Lu Chang'an walked over quickly, held his armpits with both hands, lifted Qin Peng down and placed him on the ground. You think you're still a child, stand tall and see farther, okay, Lu Chang'an smiled, but saw that the dazzling look in Qin Peng's eyes finally dissipated, and was replaced by a childish look of contentment. Stretching out his arms, hugged Qin Peng. I'm here to see you. Here, come and see me, Qin Peng muttered. For the old man, it is difficult for the young people to understand that there is an elder he admires living in the world at this age. Just like many adults, even if they have become independent and have become the backbone of the family, their parents' survival is a responsibility and a peace of mind. If their parents are gone, they will feel empty behind them, with no way out and no one to rely on. No matter how weak the feeling is, it lingers in my heart. Qin Peng has long become the towering tree behind countless people, but he knows that even now, he is just a seedling under the shade of his elder brother's tree that blocks the sky and the sun. Several guards were stunned. As soon as the young man got started, he lifted the old man up and put it down like a child. His words were neither big nor small. What kind of person is he? Is there anyone else talking to the old man like this in the world? Addressing you and me directly, the tone was even more repulsive. If the eldest lady next to him had not shown a full smile with tears in his eyes, the guards would have taken measures against this young man. I checked the time of the high-speed rail. You should have arrived at Jinling at 5:30. I have been waiting here at 5:20. Qin Peng held Lu Chang'an's hand and asked in need of an explanation. We arrived at Jinling at 5:30, to the Jinling high-speed railway station. It will take a while for the high-speed railway station to get here, Qin Yanan said to Qin Peng. Her feelings for Qin Peng are even more complicated. She is a heroic elder who has admired her since she was a child and has a majestic body. In fact, it was another relationship from 100 years ago, and she still doesn't know what to call Qin Peng. Yes, I'm getting confused, Qin Peng laughed. When people get older, they can't figure out many things. They can't even figure out the arrival time of the high-speed train and the time they can get there. Go in, I'll rub your legs and feet later. Didn't you persuade him to sit down for a while after standing for such a long time? Lu Chang'an said the next sentence to several guards. I sat down, but I didn't listen to my advice. I stood up as soon as I sat down, the guard said quickly. The young man's tone was normal and gentle, but it may be because he saw his intimate and casual attitude towards the old man, which made people confused. His identity makes people feel a lot of pressure in his words. Am I under their control? Qin Peng straightened his body and said. He was also proud. Lu Chang'an smiled. Ordinary people are like this. The older they get, the more childlike their tempers become. Only old people who can enjoy their old age have such qualifications. Qin Peng took the hands of Lu Chang'an and Qin Yanan and walked into the yard. Eat first, I asked the kitchen to prepare your favorite food. I originally wanted to cook by myself, but they didn't let me do it. Forget it tonight, I will cook tomorrow, Lu Chang'an nodded. Make me some lychee meat. Sister Jin and I both loved it when we were kids. I also like to eat now. Lychee meat is rich in oil and polysaccharide. It is a traditional famous dish of Fujian. The lean meat is cut into the size of lychees, the skin is carved and then deep fried. The shape of the pan looks like lychees, so it is named after it. It is not a healthy food suitable for the elderly, but Lu Chang'an will give it to Qin Peng does it according to his wishes. The eating place is in the east wing. Qin Peng and Ye Sijin used to study here and eat here. Ye Chenai often accompanied them to eat here and occasionally cooked. At that time, Ye Chenai turned the tide in the crisis of the Ye family. The Qin family and the Ye family were on good terms, and the investments they made to help each other achieved extremely high profits. Ye Chenai had a high reputation in the Qin and Ye families. The Qin family was certainly happy to teach Qin Peng to Ye Chenai, but they did not expect that Qin Peng would later embark on a revolutionary path. Road, and began to believe in Marxism. When the old man of the Qin family saw Ye Chenai again, he thought that this had a lot to do with the teacher's poor guidance. Naturally, he blew his beard and glared, but he had no choice but to do anything. Chicken velvet with golden bamboo shoots, liangzi crispy eel, snow mountain shrimp, yellow croaker in pickled vegetable soup, and a bowl of steamed noodles for each of us are all our favorites when we were kids. Qin Peng pointed to a few dishes and said, "Try them. Taste it to see if it tastes like that time. The taste is not important. Those people who sit together to eat are the most important." Qin Yan'an pulled Lu Chang'an and Qin Peng to sit down. "It's a pity that the one from the Su family is not here," Qin Peng sighed softly. Qin Yan'an glanced at Lu Chang'an and found that he was already eating the bowl of noodles seriously. Qin Yan'an thought of some stories about steamed noodles. The origin of steamed noodles is the longevity noodles that existed in the Tang dynasty. Su Dongpo, who was related to many delicacies, loved eating steamed noodles. He even wrote a poem. He wanted to be a soup cake customer, but he raised some money to make dear books. At the time of Su Dongpo, Saizai noodles were still called longevity noodles, but later they were called saucy noodles because a scholar from Kishan got a wife who was very good at cooking. The day after her daughter-in-law came to the house, she made a bowl of noodles for the family. The whole family was full of praise. Later, my brother-in-law took the imperial examination and invited his classmates to dinner at home. He asked his sister-in-law to make the best noodles. Because of word of mouth among these scholars, this noodle became sister-in-law's noodle. So at this time Qin Peng mentioned Sumei. To Qin Peng and Ye Sijin, Sumei was their sister-in-law, but at this time Lu Chang'an was seriously eating the noodles. Is it because he also missed Sumei? Or is it because he wants to eat his sister-in-law? "Old man, do you still call me sister-in-law Sumei?" Qin Yan'an looked at Qin Peng and said. The old man's thoughts are difficult for ordinary people to understand. He asked the kitchen to prepare this bowl of soy noodles. He may not have wanted to help Sumei make peace with Lu Chang'an. The meaning is in it. "Oh, my elder sister-in-law is like my mother. What's more, she has contributed a lot to our original career. It's not too much to call her sister-in-law." Qin Peng didn't quite understand why Qin Yan'an suddenly asked this question. His feelings for Qin Yan'an over the years it's also very complicated. I know who she is intellectually, but watching a beautiful little girl grow up slowly and enjoy the happiness of family, it is impossible not to have that feeling of growing up in my heart. Hearing Qin Peng's direct admission, Qin Yan'an was relieved, indicating that the old man was unintentional. If Qin Peng really intended to match up, he hoped that Lu Chang'an and Sumai would reconcile and rebuild their old relationship harmoniously. Qin Yan'an was really worried, because Lu Chang'an was not only he values her as a younger sister and also cares about his younger brother. Lu Chang'an was eating noodles. Qin Peng's chef was naturally extraordinary. In addition to carefully preparing suitable meals for Qin Peng, if guests came, they also had to satisfy everyone and entertain people who were not inexperienced in taste. The noodles are good, and he was savoring them carefully to show his respect and appreciation for the chef's craftsmanship, when he heard Qin Yan'an's words. In the past, he would have just treated Qin Yan'an as a casual question, but today he had some insights into them in the waiting room. The confrontation between Zhujiang and Sima Yi suddenly grasped Qin Yinen's motive for asking this question, and he couldn't help but shake his head. They can think so much about any one thing, and they must be able to survive until the last episode of the palace drama. Maybe the emperor was tortured to death by them and could only listen to politics behind the curtain. The update is a little late, but it can be counted as 2 chapters of the new book yesterday and 2 chapters of the old book. It is a small explosion. Please vote for the new month. It will continue to explode today. I'm really immortal. Author, Chulian Kui Kan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 708. After dinner, Lu Chang'an pressed Qin Peng's legs and feet and stretched his muscles. Then Qin Peng and Qin Yinan accompanied Lu Chang'an for a walk in the garden. Qin Peng sat in a wheelchair, pushed by Qin Yinan, and followed Lu Chang'an. Qin Peng and Qin Yinan both looked at his back. There was moonlight in Jinling, just like many nights 100 years ago. His shadow was also very long. He was followed by someone who imitated his walking posture and wanted to show off. A steady little boy, a little girl holding his finger and jumping up and down. In a daze yesterday. It's just that the little boy has experienced 100 years of historical events, and the little girl has also experienced a past that is like a myth to ordinary people. To him, it was only a brief moment. Lu Chang'an took a blanket and covered Qin Peng, and poured a cup of hot water for Qin Peng to drink. It was a bit cold at night. He walked around the garden where many memories had been left, and then returned to the penthouse to talk by the fire. Until about 10 o'clock in the evening, Qin Peng's secretary Lao Zhou came over and reminded him several times, and Qin Peng went back to rest. "Old man, there is something I don't know whether to say or not." Qin Peng glanced at Lao Zhou and said, "Then you shouldn't say it." Lao Zhou bent over and nodded. In fact, this matter was really stuck in his throat. A servant reported to Lao Zhou that the young man who never wanted to reveal his identity and relationship with the old man seemed to have vomited a little into the water when he was pouring water for him. Saliva. This thing was so ridiculous that the servant was not sure whether he had seen it wrong. It was just that the servant was related to Lao Zhou, so he had the courage to talk to Lao Zhou. Qin Yinan and Lu Chang'an had no intention of going to bed so early. They were still sitting next to the stove. Qin Peng also liked this tune. In the cold winter, it was wet and cold outside, but there was a fire in the house. They sat beside it and talked or didn't talk. "I feel very comfortable. It's a feeling you don't get by turning on the heat and heating up the whole house. There is only one warmest place in the house. When everyone is gathered together, this is the warm feeling at home. Just like the electric heater in Lu Chang'an's living room, it can also warm up the stupid mothers, stupid children, and stupid people upstairs and downstairs." The little old lady gathered herself together. "The old man is in good health. There will be no problems this winter." Qin Yinan rubbed his hands with a reassuring smile on his face. "The most difficult thing for the old man to go through is winter. The old people who have passed away in this season are always better than others. More time." "Of course there is no problem." Lu Chang'an also nodded. "When we were children, did we often sit together and chat like this?" Qin Yinan asked sweetly. This was a feeling exclusive to her and her brother, because whether it was Sumei in the past or in Nuan now, they were neither here nor there. "When he was a child, I stayed with him. More often, I will teach you to read and ask you to memorize. Ziking is relatively honest and honest. Even if I am dozing off, he will memorize the book word for word, and then flip through the book to read the articles I have given him." Several times Lu Chang'an laughed. "You are a bit opportunistic. As long as I am not staring at you, you will find ways to be lazy. When reading a long article, you only read the beginning and the end, leaving out the middle." "Is Zhou Dongdong like this too?" Qin Yinan said coquettishly, dragging Zhou Dongdong, who obviously didn't like to study. This would make Qin Yinan feel that his lazy past was cute. Zhou Dongdong is not like this. She doesn't know a few words. I read it to her. She fell asleep as soon as I read the beginning. Lu Chang'an laughed. You don't know that. You are smart. When I read to you, I am quite serious, and I can often think a little more than Ziking, and there are many questions, but Ziking memorizes it by rote and then understands it carefully. While the two were talking, Lu Chang'an's cell phone rang, and it was Shang Guandandan who made a video call. Lu Chang'an hung up. Why did you hang up? Qin Yanan asked strangely. Shang Guandandan called over again. Just as Lu Chang'an was about to hang up, Qin Yanan quickly picked up the phone and answered the call. Qin Yanan saw Shang Guandandan's face close to her and stepped back a little. She glanced back at Qin Yanan, then moved closer to the camera and said loudly to Qin Yanan, Yaya, why is it you? Where is my little emperor? Qin Yanan knew that the little emperor Shang Guandandan was referring to was Lu Chang'an, but when she saw Shang Guandandan's look, she couldn't help but laugh. He's nearby. He accidentally hung up the phone just now. Shang Guandandan put on makeup, and Qin Yanan could see blush on her cheeks and bright red lips. Her eyebrows, which were slightly raised and imposing, making her feel very upright and noble when she was quiet, were painted into it looks like broad beans. I told you not to answer the call. If you see this, what if you dream about her at night? Lu Chang'an shook his head and determined that he would not be at home next to his electric heating table during a certain period of time. It became a happy place for Zhou Shuling and Shang Guandandan, where they learned and exchanged their poor makeup skills, while Lu Chang'an couldn't comment on them. Zhou Shuling is relatively conservative and shy, has self-esteem, knows how to be reserved and shameful, but Shang Guandandan is a bit lacking in self-awareness. After putting on makeup, she always takes selfies and posts them on her WeChat moments, and she has no mental barriers even if she has a video call with Lu Chang'an. Once, she was very confident in maintaining her makeup and went to attend the opening banquet of Gao Qunyi's martial arts gym with Lu Chang'an and Zhou Dongdong. Let him talk to me, Shang Guandandan ordered. Qin Yanan turned the phone aside, facing Lu Chang'an with the front camera, but she still held the phone in her hand to prevent Lu Chang'an from hanging up again, making Shang Guandandan unhappy, and then blaming Qin Yanan for not doing things well. What's the matter? Lu Chang'an controlled the muscles on his face well and looked at Shang Guandandan calmly. Zhou Dongdong was beside him, his face came close, and he pushed Shang Guandandan out of the screen, and then Shang Guandandan pushed Zhou Dongdong away again. I saw a good poem today, let me read it to you, Shang Guandandan said, and at the same time pushed Zhou Dongdong away, who had circled around and leaned his head into the mirror from the other side. What poem? This was a rare serious matter. Lu Chang'an also wanted to know which poem was praised by Shang Guandandan. Shang Guandandan often read poems, and Lu Chang'an still remembered her Emperor Qin and Hanwu were very powerful, and I suddenly looked back and saw that man rolling in a snow pit. Please listen to Fan Xian's Ascend the High. Shang Guan began in a calm tone, the wind is strong and the apes high in the sky are screaming in mourning, and the white birds are flying back from the clear sand in Zigong. The endless falling trees are rustling, and the endless Yangtze River is rolling in. Thousands of miles away. I am often a guest in the sad autumn, and I am alone on the stage after being sick for 100 years. I hate hardships, and hate the frost on my temples, and my wine glass is clouded by the new ones. Not bad, Lu Chang'an nodded. This poem is indeed a good poem. No wonder it made Shang Guandandan want to share it. In addition, Zhou Dongdong seemed to have something to say to him. He kept scrolling from the left, right, bottom, and top of the screen. Squeezed her round face in, and then was pushed away by Shang Guandandan. Zhou Dongdong has something to tell you. Only then did Shang Guandandan point his phone at Zhou Dongdong, who had been trying to steal the camera. Brother Chang'an, I heard my grandma say today that she wants to find a new father for me. I don't want a new father. Brother Chang'an, when will you come back? Zhou Dongdong finished speaking in one breath. When he heard this, Zhou Dong was very unhappy. "I'll be back the day after tomorrow," Lu Chang'an said. "You can leave this matter to me," Shang Guandandan said from the side, with a bit of anger in his tone. Zhou Shuling is her daughter-in-law. She even gave the queen seal to Zhou Shuling. In fact, reading poems was just a casual thing, and Lu Chang'an saying this is the point. "If you go and deal with it, I will deduct your monthly pocket money," Lu Chang'an said to Shang Guandandan in a calm tone. His tone was truly peaceful, because Shang Guandandan actually knew how to come to discuss with him instead of taking it upon himself to discuss it. Dealing with situations she considers harem matters. Shang Guandandan hesitated for a moment, touched his pocket, took out her 2 red envelopes and looked at them. He felt that he didn't have much confidence to resist Lu Chang'an's trick of deducting pocket money, so he acted obediently and nodded. "Zhou Dong, did your mother say that she would find a new father for you?" Lu Chang'an asked. "No, my mother said that no one would like such a stupid mother and child like brother Chang'an, so I don't want anyone else to be my new father because that's what my mother said at the time, and she even admitted that she was a stupid mother. Then Zhou Dong just admits that he is a stupid child." "I know." Lu Chang'an smiled and reached out to touch the screen, as if he had touched Zhou Dong's head through the screen. "Go to sleep. If you don't want it, no one will be your new father." Hearing what brother Chang'an said, Zhou Dong exhaled loudly and finally went to sleep, because brother Chang'an said that he would take Zhou Dong to fly to the sky, and he would always remember the person who found a way to do it. Brother Chang'an is the best in the world, and in Zhou Dong's mind, he is more powerful than Sun Wukong. "I'm really immortal." Author, Chulian Kui Kan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 709. Qin Yan'an stood up, poured 2 cups of boiled water to make tea, and flipped through the news on his mobile phone. With a faint smile on his lips, he watched Lu Chang'an send 2 text messages to Zhou Shuling. Zhou Shuling seemed to see it immediately and gave a reply, and Lu Chang'an responded again. After chatting for a few words, Lu Chang'an turned off the screen of his mobile phone. This was a normal operation. Qin Yan'an knew that he usually had something to talk about and was not good at chatting with others through text messages. He often felt that the matter was over, regardless of whether the other party still wanted to talk. "If we chat anymore, he won't reply." Who is Fan Xian? This song Ascend the High is not a work of the same name. It is obviously the one by Du Fu. It ranks first among the 7 rhythms in ancient and modern times. Qin Yan'an suppressed a lot of thoughts and started with the most insignificant things. Fan, the title of saint, is well deserved. Let alone the beauty of neatness and rhythm, this kind of state is difficult for ordinary people to understand and render. Before reading Ascend the High, I always felt that Du Fu and Li Bai were almost incompatible. After reading it, it suddenly became clear. It's not that Du Fu is any less interested in Li Bai, it's just that Li Bai's style is more acceptable and understandable to me. Is it because, as an extraordinary person, it is difficult to empathize with the author's emotions in every detail? Is this the point? Qin Yan'an suppressed the urge to change the topic and cooperated with her brother. Yes, it has always been such a difficult state to enter. It was only the countless years of progress and tempering of human civilization that gave birth to Du Fu in the Tang dynasty, and Du Fu tempered his life and condensed this poem that integrated his life. This is the extraordinary state of the saint in the poem, and the literary spirit exuded can also make people like me deeply infected. Lu Chang'an sighed softly. Unfortunately, I read this poem a little too late. After he finished writing this poem, it seemed that all his spirit and energy had left his mortal body, condensed in his poems, and passed away soon after. "Why do you call me such a person? You say it as if you are not worth mentioning." Qin Yan'an was a little unhappy. Although she also respected Du Fu's talent, her brother was the first priority in her heart, and his talent, it doesn't matter anything like that. I just want to be ranked first, there is no reason at all. Let's put it this way, many novels have the setting of artistic conception. If Du Fu's poem and creative process are placed in this kind of novel, it means that when the poem is completed, the heaven and earth react, and the spirit and spirit leave the mortal body and are broken. The void has reached the highest level and has become the pinnacle existence in the setting system of this novel. Lu Chang'an thought of some novels he had read. Many works have settings using poetry, and the favorable conditions behind them are people's confidence in Chinese culture. Although many readers today are not familiar with poetry, they know and believe that their own traditional culture is the most awesome. You are in a different world, no matter which world you are from. There is no way to compare it with our poetry. When you take out the weapon, it will be a shining Milky Way, hitting the natives of the other world. No one can stop it, and everyone will be shocked again and again. Brother, stop it. Qin Yan'an couldn't bear it anymore. The point was actually that Zhou Dongdong's grandmother wanted to find a husband for Zhou Shuling. You're talking about another world. Are you so capable of talking about it? Lu Chang'an smiled and continued, I know, the point is that Shang Guandandan thought that the author of this poem was Fan Xian, and I did not correct her mistake. This is the interesting part. Why should I correct her? When you see something funny, don't correct it, because then she will continue to make such mistakes next time, and you will continue to find it funny. If you correct it, wouldn't you be reducing the pleasure you may feel? Enjoy. That's why when I see other people doing stupid things and saying stupid things, most of the time I stay silent or agree. This bad old man. Qin Yan'an had no choice but to take a sip of tea, put down the cup, and lowered her voice. The point is that Zhou Dongdong's grandmother is looking for a husband for Zhou Shuling. Since you won't let Dan Dan interfere, what are you going to do? Lu Chang'an also took a sip of tea, grabbed the fire blanket, put his hands under the blanket and roasted it on the fire, and looked at Qin Yan'an smiling without saying a word. Why are you laughing? Qin Yan'an was a little embarrassed by his smile, as if he could see through her mind. She obviously just wanted to gossip. Isn't it natural for women to gossip? Why are you laughing? Is this something stupid that he finds funny but doesn't want to correct? Men who think women's gossip is stupid are the ones who are really stupid. Qin Yan'an looked at Lu Chang'an confidently, even though he was not as shameless as him. Such a look, looking into his eyes, would make Qin Yan'an's cheeks as hot as the flames. Huge, red. I'll tell you a secret. Lu Chang'an rubbed his hands again, holding the teacup in both hands and drinking tea slowly. Qin Yan'an was anxious to death. He didn't comment on the key points just now, nor did he gossip with her. The secret he used to change the topic at this time must be something Qin Yan'an wanted to know, and he was so slow and leisurely. As we all know, the Empress Dowagers of the Western Han Dynasty were very powerful. Both Empress Dowager Lu and Empress Dowager Do did whatever they wanted and controlled the political and military power. The emperor had nothing to do with them. Emperor Wu finally made his youngest son the prince, in order to prevent this from happening again. Due to the situation, the biological mother of the youngest son was also killed. Lu Chang'an said with some regret, how did you know that Lu Fulan married another Shang Guandandan? This Shang Guandandan's grandfather and maternal grandfather were respectively the two ministers of Tuigu in the dynasty, one Shang Guanji, one Huo Guang, tisk tisk. This is simply the beginning of the chosen one. She became the queen mother at a young age, and has a lot of time to consolidate her power and status. Originally, Shang Guandandan was fully qualified to marry her. Background: to become the first female emperor. Qin Yan'an listened to Lu Chang'an continue to ramble, and could not help but picture the little queen mother who had just come out with two small red envelopes to count the money, and then was subdued by Lu Chang'an's method of deducting pocket money. Shang Guandandan had one jade seal and two empress seals. After Lu Fuling passed away, she kept the emperor's jade seal and handed it over to the future emperor. No one else could touch the jade seal. After she became the queen mother, there was a queen mother seal. The edict with the seal is more effective than the emperor's edict. The most important thing is that she also has a queen's seal, which she wants to pass on to her daughter-in-law. After Lu Chang'an said this, he did not continue. Well, as for what meaning Qin Yanan will understand from this passage, and what kind of plot between mother-in-law and daughter-in-law it will trigger, it has nothing to do with him. Maybe they can make their mother-in-law and daughter-in-law role-playing game no longer possible, and he can be out of sight and out of mind. Qin Yanan straightened her body, pressed her hands on her skirt as if to stand up, then sat down again, her eyes shining. Go to sleep, it's night. Lu Chang'an finished drinking tea and stood up. The servant led Lu Chang'an and Qin Yanan to a small courtyard at the end of the garden. This place was particularly quiet and elegant. It was obviously a carefully selected residence for Lu Chang'an. You two, please have a rest early. The servant opened a room door and said to Qin Yanan, Miss, your luggage has been delivered to the room. Are there 2 bedrooms here? Lu Chang'an asked uncertainly. 1. Ah, Lu Chang'an turned to look at Qin Yanan, who was also surprised and shy, and asked, why is there only 1 bedroom? Is there no other room? The other rooms and gardens have been sealed off and have not been cleaned. The old man specially ordered this room to be arranged. This room is the best in the whole house. After the servant finished speaking, he hung up the room key, then turned around and twisted the fat Run's figure left. She didn't want to talk to the young man who spit into the old man's cup. Maybe it's a double room. Qin Yanan said to Lu Chang'an with a blushing face. All kinds of requests. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I'm really immortal. Author, Chulian Kui Kan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 710. The history of the Qin family's ancestors can be traced back to when Zhu Yuanzhang was still king of Wu. The foundation of the Qin family's garden was preserved from that time. Historically, it has also won honorary titles such as several famous gardens in the south of the Yangtze River. He has received some emperors who visited the south of the Yangtze River, as well as countless other royal bloodlines and chief ministers. Among merchants, the Ye family can only compare with such a reputation. Of course, since Ye Chenyu disappeared from the world and Ye Sijin died, the Ye family has long been separated. The current public momentum cannot be compared with that of the past, but one side branch is developing quite well, and it has surpassed the main branch of the past. The momentum of home. At that time, wealthy families liked to build gardens. This garden of the Qin family was not as beautiful as the Suzhou gardens. The buildings in the garden were exquisite and complex, and the waterscape was especially praiseworthy. Just like Qin Yanan and Lu Chang'an's current small courtyard, next to it is a pool dotted with pavilions and pavilions. It is surrounded by flowers, trees, and green bamboos, pavilions and pavilions, reflected by clear water and green pools. Every step brings a scene, and a new picture scroll appears at every corner. The orange light in the room reflected the aged walls. The tall logs supporting the roof in the corners were like his vertical shadow. The shyness on Qin Yanan's cheeks was like intoxicating wine. Lu Chang'an was just a little surprised. This was obviously Qin Peng's arrangement. At his age, there were not many things that he could worry about. Seeing that some things from 100 years ago had not yet been untied, he took matters into his own hands, thinking that it seems like this can lead to something good. Cold winter, orange lights, the beautiful woman's plump figure, the flowing water in her eyes, Lu Chang'an's faint smile, facing Qin Yanan who looked slightly embarrassed and helpless. Qin Yanan obviously also thought that this was Qin Peng's arrangement, so the possibility of 2 standard single beds placed side by side in this room was basically zero. Lu Chang'an walked in first. 100 years ago, he often took Ye Sijin as a guest at the Qin family, but after all, it was impossible to fully understand the layout of the courtyard and attic here. He looked at the layout of the 3 rooms, the long porch and the sound of water. There is a gurgling patio, and the bedroom is located in the middle. The space is not large, and the floor is not high, but it does not appear narrow or cramped. Different from the wing room where we just chatted and drank tea, the floor heating has been modified here. The temperature in the room is quite high. It may be a bit hot wearing winter clothes. Lu Chang'an is used to wearing light clothes, but it feels quite comfortable. Although many modern elements are inevitably added to the room for the comfort of living, the feeling of the old time is still very strong. Many people go to Jiangnan ancient towns or B/U0026B hotels with Chinese-style design to pursue such an atmosphere. Lu Chang'an's feeling at this time was not much different from that of others. He was just immersed in the atmosphere of the past time, and did not pay attention to the living environment that he had become accustomed to. After all, living in such a small Jiangnan courtyard for a long time was already a long time. That happened more than 100 years ago. The feeling is complicated, a bit like yesterday, and at the same time, I feel that things are different and people are different. Lu Chang'an wants to recite a poem about this situation. Never mind. Just 2 words, it seems like a poem but not a poem, and it contains endless emotions that are hard to express. It must have a status in modern poetry comparable to Dufu's Ascend the High. Brother, there are several rooms here, but there is only one bedroom and one bed. Qinyan turned around. The structure of the room has not changed much, but the purpose of each bedroom has changed a lot in the past. The bedroom was upstairs, and the maid there was also a place to sleep while waiting downstairs, but it was completely different now. Qinyan didn't think she would sleep with Lu Chang'an tonight, but Qin Peng revealed such thoughts that everyone understood, and it made the two of them alone a little embarrassed, right? Lu Chang'an pressed the railing hanging above the pool, looked at the scattered lights not far away, returned to the bedroom, closed the curtain, and nodded towards Qinyan. I will sleep on the bed tonight, and you will sleep on the floor. It shouldn't be cold. A man and a woman living alone in the same room were inevitably a bit charming at first. Qinyan didn't think much about it, but she just felt that there should be some atmosphere. Most people would only say this as a joke, but he didn't necessarily think so. This sentence made Qinyan a little funny and a little angry. Then when you and Nuan were in linen, did you sleep on the floor, or did she sleep on the floor? It was snowing that day. Qinyan was a little confused. What does this have to do with snow? Is it because it's snowing and cold that one of you doesn't have a bed and the other sleeps on the floor? It has been a long time since Lu Chang'an and Nuan's trip to Linen, but those who paid attention naturally have not forgotten it, and have collected more related gossip piecemeal. It was after Nuan returned to Juncha that she released some of the photos she took in Linen bit by bit. Why is it released little by little, every now and then? Because this way she can stimulate those who follow her from time to time. Of course, maybe she just likes to reminisce like this. Qinyan doesn't necessarily think that Nuan has malicious intentions, she just speculates on it casually. Qinyan did not directly follow Nuan's social updates. When Zhu Huntang and Qinyan were chatting, they just chatted about Nuan. As for why Zhu Huntang knew about Nuan's developments, of course he learned it from Bai Hui, a good friend of Nuan and Zhu Huntang. Some of Nuan's photos were obviously taken in a hotel. Qinyan took a casual look at them and knew that the hotel couldn't even have heating, and sleeping on the floor wasn't cold. But neither Lu Chang'an nor Nuan slept on the floor. Today, Qinyan was asked to sleep on the floor. He was such a good brother, making people feel as warm as spring in their hearts. Nowadays, when people see snowy days, they always think of snowy scenery. Whenever it snows in a city like Linen, it always arouses many longing sighs on social media. Lu Chang'an's tone was calm and serious. Looking at Qinyan. That's true, but what does this have to do with you letting me sleep on the floor? At this time, few people think about it. Snow means cold winter, and cold winter has always been a very difficult period in the history of human existence. Being able to enjoy the winter snow scene has been something only a few people have been able to enjoy for most of the time since the birth of mankind. privilege? Lu Chang'an asked. Human beings are afraid of cold as a physiological instinct, but how can we resist the cold? So you drilled wood to make fire and taught humans to make fire to keep out the cold. Qin Yan'an calmly cooperated with his ramblings. Fat. Ah. Whether it's a fire to keep warm or the current development of various group heating equipment, they are actually just relying on external conditions. When humans do not have so many external conditions to resist the cold, they can only rely on their own fat. When humans encounter cold, they rely on fat. The desires and needs are rooted in genes. Lu Chang'an moved his eyes away from Qin Yan'an's fat pile. Do you understand what I mean? Qin Yan'an finally understood what he meant by talking about it, and she laughed angrily. You mean, because it snowed that day, you felt the cold, and the desire for fat rooted in your genes was activated, so you just sleep with an nuan? It's not snowing today, you can't feel the cold, even though I am also a ball of fat, you can send me to sleep on the floor? That's pretty much what it means. Lu Chang'an laughed. You understand me very well. There is an obvious flaw in your words. How much fat does an nuan have? Can her fat content activate you? Qin Yan'an snorted, walked around in front of Lu Chang'an, and said nothing. I went to look in the cabinet. She just walked around in front of him. Needless to say, she was showing off. That was too vulgar. And a quilt and cushions. Qin Yan'an breathed a sigh of relief. This solved the problem. After all, it was impossible for the two of them to sleep on the same bed, but there must be nothing to worry about sleeping in the same room. Qin Yan'an spread the soft cushions on the carpet, took pillows and quilts, made a sleeping bed, and said to Lu Chang'an, it's so late, why don't you bother? Let's just make do with it. You are the eldest man, you sleep on the bed. She's just a sister who no one cares about, so it doesn't matter if she lays on the floor. Lu Chang'an actually had no objection to sleeping on the bed or the floor, but seeing her resentment, he lay down and occupied the floor that Qin Yan'an had just made. He's a bit like a brother. Qin Yan'an pursed her lips and smiled. She saw the luggage placed in the corner and turned her head to look at Lu Chang'an hesitantly. What's wrong? Lu Chang'an was holding the back of his head with his hands, lying on the floor and looking at Qin Yan'an. I brought clothes and cheongsam in the style of the Republic of China. I thought that since Sunangxiu can return to Su Mei's appearance, how about I try to return to Ye Saijan's appearance? Do you want to see Jin'er? I'm really immortal. Author, Chulian Kui Kan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 711. Lu Chang'an stood on the balcony and looked at the waterside pavilion, illuminated by lights. The strange stone pavilion and the boat were hidden in the dark night, and the quiet and elegant fragrance gradually filled the air. Before the beauty arrives, the fragrance is already spreading. Qin Yan'an was changing clothes in the bedroom. Her shadow fell on the curtains, as light and slender as a paper-cut figure in a shadow puppet show. She pulled up her long hair and was carefully tying her hair into a bun. She put her hands on the collar and began to unbutton one by one. Lu Chang'an turned his head and stopped looking at her shadow, still looking into the boundless darkness. If you want to live like an ordinary person, it is impossible to forget your feelings. Ordinary people are full of fireworks. They have all kinds of life and death, joys and sorrows, and the most heart-wrenching thing is missing them. Lu Chang'an always felt that he had an ordinary heart and had never truly transcended the world. He was also very satisfied with his state. This was his pursuit. This ordinary heart is much harder than ordinary people. It cannot be steamed, boiled, beaten, or fried. It is like a copper pea. If you look closely, it is extremely smooth and has no flaws. It's just that most of the smooth, mirror-like surfaces in this world are the result of countless polishing and cutting processes. Yes, Saijan, he missed her. He thought of her as a child, jumping up and down behind him, trotting a few steps from time to time and grabbing his little finger. When he looked back at her, she raised her head, with a happy smile on her round face. He thought that in order to wait for him, she agreed to go home at night, but she would sit at the door and wait stubbornly from dusk to dawn. He thought she was in his arms. He held her hand and taught her to write her name, the crooked Yesigen. He thought that when she grew up, she would put on the gown and skirt of a women's college, her long hair would flow, and she would look like a girl. The slightly shy tenderness between her eyebrows would always bloom when she first saw him. Elder brother. The curtains and doors opened, and a soft cry came out. Jinner is here to see you. Lu Chang'an turned around and saw Yesigen, who had traveled through time and was stunned at night. The bright girl with a touch of sadness and melancholy stood under the light and looked at him with shy tenderness. Her eyes were like a bright moon, shining through the ages, reflecting him 100 years ago, and also containing him 100 years from now. She was wearing a light green and silvery silk top. The edges of the sleeves and the hem of the dress were woven with circles of intertwined lace. Silver flower clusters were scattered on her chest, blooming along with her undulating chest line. In a state of full bloom, the white arms stretched out from the loose cuffs, and the hands were clasped together in front of the lower abdomen, and the green and tender fingers were slightly nervous or uneasy. The skirt is slightly shorter than what people remember from TV dramas of the Republic of China, and it just touches the knees. You can still find many posters of clothing companies from the Republic of China period, and you can know that the atmosphere at that time was not very conservative. She was wearing short socks. The socks were made of soft material and were very suitable for the delicate skin of a woman. They exuded a warmth that made people want to hold them in their hands and feel the warmth. She wore no shoes and walked on the floor as quietly as when time slipped away from her without taking away any trace of her beauty. Brother, Jinner is back with you again. There is a natural squeamishness in her voice. This is the kind of honeyed voice that a woman can only exude when facing her most intimate, beloved, and most reassuring person in a private environment. Squeamish. Lu Chang'an walked in, slowly closed the door curtain, and hugged her heavily into his arms. She let out a low gasp, leaned into his arms, raised her chin slightly, and opened her lips because her breathing was suddenly choked. Her eyes were confused, and she leaned her head against his cheek. Because of his embrace, her body leaned forward, and her toes involuntarily stood up, her waist pressing against his lower abdomen. The feeling of being hugged so powerfully by him made her feel the blood in her body hitting her heart. And the brain, impacting every place, a little dizzy. Jinner, brother, I'm sorry. Lu Chang'an rarely feels that he is sorry for someone. Sometimes he doesn't care, sometimes he forgets, and sometimes he has no way not to care or forget. She was actually Yesigen, and she didn't need to work so hard to pretend to be Yesigen to make him feel her presence. Brother, it's okay. Jinner is fine. Her voice sounded in his ears with a whisper stirred by the wind. Lu Chang'an let go of his embrace, held her round shoulders, and looked carefully at the face with light makeup, which was no longer reserved. Without that deliberate indifference, the shyness and admiration in his eyes finally turned into what Yesigen used to be in his heart. Normally, Qin Yinan was always more reserved and proud. Sometimes she seemed to cling to him, sometimes she would gently push him away, and sometimes she would quietly try to reveal her little thoughts to observe his reaction. When she regained her identity as Yesigen, she looked like what she is now. She was no longer an old friend who seemed to have re-established a relationship with him, but his clinging and cute sister. Just be good, I will take you with me wherever I go from now on. Lu Chang'an held her hand and sat down, looking at her carefully. Qin Yinan's eyes trembled slightly. The look in his eyes made her heart beat fast and her breathing became short. It would be great if he looked at her like this normally. It would be great if he looked at Qin Yinan like this. No, she was Yesigen. I remember many things, but it will take some time to fully recover the memory and emotional details. His hand was holding the back of his hand. Qin Yinan turned over his hand and intertwined his fingers. There was no moonlight outside the window, but looking at his eyes shining like the moon, Qin Yinan remembered the song Chen Feng Moon Rise. This is the oldest poem in the world about the moon and beauty. Countless literati began to associate the moon with longing, starting from this poem. The moon rises brightly, and there are outstanding people and officials. You are so carefree and carefree, but your mind is so quiet. The moon rise is bright, and the outstanding people are bright. I am relieved and worried, and my heart is troubled. The moon is shining brightly, and the outstanding people are burning brightly. Shu Yao Shao 11, the hard work is miserable. As long as you look up at the moon, your thoughts will be awakened, just like Ye Sijin will be awakened as long as his eyes are watching her. Brother, we will never be separated. Qin Yinan leaned on Lu Chang'an's shoulder and said softly. Now is no longer the time of crisis of national subjugation and species extinction 100 years ago. Although this crisis has never been truly resolved, there may still be a need in the future. When he came forward, he said that he would take her with him wherever he went. She would stay with him anytime, but now that she was holding his hand and having his child in her belly, how could they be separated? She just doesn't want to separate, but she doesn't think about anything else. She is not one of those little girls who only get jealous. More than 100 years have passed, and many things that little girls care about are just trivial matters. Companionship is what matters. The most important. Didn't Sume go to the Antarctic? Maybe she will marry a penguin. Isn't the final winner still oneself? Still with him. There is an extra chapter here, which will be updated in about a week. There is a high probability that Beifan 6 and Professor Lu will be updated in the same week. I'm really immortal. Author, Chu Lian Kui Kan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 712. Qin Yinan woke up in the morning, listened to the steady breathing, smelled the familiar body odor, opened his eyes and saw Lu Chang'an lying next to him, and couldn't help but think of Niu Jiao's song Bodhisattva Man. The jade furnace is made of ice and mandarin duck brocade, and the powder melts into the incense and sweats the mountain pillow. There was the sound of a windlass outside the curtain, and I raised my eyebrows and smiled in surprise. The willow shade is light and indifferent, and the cicada hairpin falls from the temples. I have to work hard all my life to make you happy today. This poem is about an intimate affair at a party, which is actually a little different from this situation, because she just chatted with Lu Chang'an for a long time last night, listening to him talk about every detail of her childhood, and finally fell asleep in her clothes without knowing it. It was already mist and dawn when I woke up. Naturally, she didn't have powder fragrance sweat mountain pillow. He must have been at An Nuan's house the night before yesterday, so this poem was more suitable for the occasion. Qin Yinan was a little shy. I have to work hard all my life to make you happy today. This sentence is really affectionate, but it makes people's hearts beat loudly and their faces turn red. It's similar to I feel haggard because of ye, my clothes are getting wider and I don't regret it. The beauty of singing harmony. She can work hard all her life to make you happy today, and it would be great if he could make people haggard because of ye, and his clothes will become wider and wider, and he will never regret it. In the morning, the warm temperature in the room was just right. It was so comfortable that Qin Yinan sighed softly. He was lying next to her. Her heart was swollen, and she could not help but have some reverie. The mature woman's love was as far away as smoke and alluring. Gradually, feeling the heat on her skin, she quickly sat up and no longer coveted his embrace. I didn't cross anything with him last night. I wonder if Qin Peng was thinking about something. If a man and a woman spent a night together without incident, I'm afraid no one would believe it. If some unscrupulous novelists found out about it, maybe some fabricated plots will be made up and spread. Just like the incident between Kui Yingying and Zhang Shen, Wang Shifu only wrote a little bit about it, but it was filled in and arranged by many idle people with countless erotic lyrics. Qin Yinan went to the bathroom to wash up. The temperature in the room was actually a bit high last night. She might have sweated a little and needed to take a shower. When she came out of the shower, she saw that Lu Chang'an had woken up and was leaning on the bedside, playing with his phone. Lu Chang'an looked at Qin Yinan. Her cheeks were pink and flushed, and her skin was moist and tender. Even if the beauty was fully clothed after taking a bath, she would exude a delicious feeling, like a fruit sprayed with water mist. The aroma is fragrant and the color is attractive. You agreed to sleep on the floor, so why did you lie on my bed all night? Lu Chang'an pointed to the quilt and pillow still spread on the floor. Nonsense, you have obviously agreed to sleep on the floor, but then you pulled me to chat, and while we were chatting, you fell asleep and refused to sleep on the floor. Qin Yinan said coquettishly, how can I be a brother like you? I don't want to sleep on the floor. It's my bed anyway, and you're the one who's lying on my bed. Is that so? Lu Chang'an thought for a moment with great suspicion, and then gave up. I am forgetful easily when I am old. Just let it be what you say. I'm just talking nonsense. Qin Yinan changed into a cheongsam, opened the balcony door and looked outside. Her hair was neatly combed, hanging down her back, with the ends falling on her hips. The gap formed between the hair, waist, and hip line is like a crescent moon. Looking through the gap, you can see the mist outside the window surrounding the attic, like a fairyland. In the morning, the beauty stands by the window on the waterfront and stares quietly, which is a stunning view. I'll go to the kitchen and have a look. I'll give Ziking something to eat today. Doesn't he want to eat lychee meat? Lu Chang'an stood up and walked to the bathroom. Wait a minute. Qin Yinan quickly grabbed Lu Chang'an, her face slightly ashamed. I'll go and clean it up. Lu Chang'an nodded. It seemed that he had changed his clothes inside and outside. Lu Chang'an stayed in Jinling for 2 days and helped Qin Peng recuperate his body. He felt that this was not the last spring festival he would spend with Qin Peng. Lu Chang'an returned to Juncha on the 4th day of the new year. Juncha is still wet and cold, and the temperature is a little lower than that of Jinling. The snow here has melted completely. Occasionally, someone will find a bit of dusty residual snow in a remote corner, and they will make a fuss about it. Remember it in the circle of friends. After Lu Chang'an arrived at the high-speed rail station, he did not leave the station. He followed the flow of people through the subway passage and passed through the turnstile, which could save him the process of exiting the station and then transferring to the subway security check. There were not many people, and there were only 2s and 3s in the passage, which was still a bit deserted. Many people seemed to have just returned home at this time of the year, with tired expectations on their faces, while others had solemn expressions, as if they had left home without knowing their return date. Lu Chang'an scanned the QR code and entered the station, putting his hands on his knees. Opposite him sat an old man with a slightly stooped but energetic figure. He was sitting in the same preferential treatment for the elderly, weak, sick, and disabled seat as Lu Chang'an. The subway is very empty, so of course you can take it casually. Lu Chang'an glanced at the old man, and the old man also glanced at Lu Chang'an. Neither of them spoke, but the old man stretched his hand into his pocket, but didn't take out anything. Lu Chang'an still maintained a quiet and calm posture. After 7 or 8 stops, the old man said something to Lu Chang'an with a hint of appreciation. It's really rare to see young people who don't use mobile phones when taking the subway. I'm going to play now. Lu Chang'an took out his phone and looked at the messages. The old man seemed relieved and took out his mobile phone. Lu Chang'an smiled. The old man probably thought at first that there were very few people sitting on the subway without playing with their mobile phones, so he also pretended not to play with their mobile phones. He looked different and actually competed with Lu Chang'an. Let's see who can resist taking out their phone to play. Struggles are everywhere in life, and Lu Chang'an lost. What made Lu Chang'an feel even more defeated was that he saw the WeChat message sent to him by Zhu Huntang. Zhu Huntang sometimes sent WeChat messages to Lu Chang'an, and sometimes sent text messages on his mobile phone. Lu Chang'an swiped, and the last time he saw the WeChat messages Zhu Huntang sent were some selfies. He closed the chat interface without looking carefully. I took another look today and realized that those were not Zhu Huntang's selfies. The sky-high, snowy, and vast style, the white and warm self-confidence were assets that Zhu Huntang did not have. This is white fennel. Even though he didn't show his face, Lu Chang'an could still recognize him. There were a few times when Bai Hui showed off her figure in front of him. Lu Chang'an didn't remember it fresh, but he still had an impression. Why did she take a close-up of Bai Hui's body and send it to him? Lu Chang'an frowned, but didn't think much about it. After she returned to Junxia, he would slowly deal with her. The latest message from Zhu Huntang was that she was wearing a pair of socks that looked a bit special in material, with her legs spread apart. A full body shot of him standing with his hands on his hips, looking awesome. Ever since Su Mei revealed the birth process of Zhu Huntang, a special species, Lu Chang'an has repeatedly felt frustrated every time he thought about her. She is not his daughter. Lu Chang'an firmly refuses to admit this. Back in the community, Lu Chang'an met old man Qian. There was a young woman beside him, holding his arm. Old man Qian looked at Lu Chang'an and showed an extremely proud look. "If you look at me like that, do you dare to come and play cards tonight?" Lu Chang'an responded to him. "Am I afraid of you? I'll let you lose from the beginning of the year to the end of the year." Old man Qian and his granddaughter naturally couldn't lose their momentum and said completely truthfully, "Prepare more money. Don't just bring 10 yuan with you when the time comes, and then say you're going back to get the money, but you never come." Old man Qian kept coming up with all kinds of little tricks, and Lu Chang'an had seen a lot. "Don't worry, I don't have enough cash. Why don't I use WeChat to transfer it to you? It seems that you are also a boss now, and you are becoming more and more careless." Old man Qian pointed to the girl next to him. "This is my granddaughter," I said before. "Introduce the one you know." "Hello." Lu Chang'an smiled. In order to take advantage of him, old man Qian used to suppress Lu Chang'an in the card game and even introduced his granddaughter, who was admitted to Hunan University in the same year as Lu Chang'an, to Lu Chang'an. "Hello, I heard my grandpa say that he lives in the same neighborhood as you." "I still can't believe it." The girl was obviously a little excited, and she was waiting to speak with a blushing face. "You know me?" "I must know him, the most famous handsome guy in our school." The girl nodded vigorously. "How did he become famous?" "Mahjong competition or beard racing competition?" Old man Qian asked suspiciously. "It must not have been through study." "Just hurt me." Lu Chang'an shook his head and walked home. After returning home, Lu Chang'an felt the warm breath and took a long breath. This small place and an electric heating table gave him an extremely strong feeling of home. Shang Guandandan held the thermos bottle and stared at the TV with squinted eyes. His eyes slowly turned sideways and landed on Lu Chang'an. Then he opened his arms and motioned Lu Chang'an to come into her arms and let her touch his head. Lu Chang'an ignored her and saw Zhou Dongdong sticking his head out from under the electric heating table. He quickly climbed out when he spotted Lu Chang'an and shouted happily, "My brother Chang'an is back. Isn't there a guest at home? Why are you still downstairs?" Lu Chang'an knew that many guests came to Zhou Shuling's home today. It was dinner time, and Zhou Dongdong should be sitting at the table waiting for dinner. If she was downstairs, would Shang Guandandan still be able to make food? She couldn't even figure out a microwave. Every button had to be pushed. "Uncle said that the guests didn't like me, so I was not allowed to go downstairs until the guests left before I could go up to eat." Zhou Dongdong put his hands in his dusty pockets and took out a few broken firecrackers. I picked up a lot of firecrackers, and after they all left, I went downstairs to set off firecrackers, and I didn't play with them either." "Dongdong, why didn't you tell me just now?" Shang Guandandan put down the thermos and sat up with an ugly expression. She glanced at Lu Chang'an and found that Lu Chang'an's face was even more ugly, as if there was a thunderstorm raining down on the whole room. "There will be an extra episode tomorrow. Please give me some monthly votes, recommendation votes, Anything else? You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I'm really immortal. Author, Chulian Kuikan Ru Siahua. Chapter 713. Lu Chang'an very calmly restrained the urge to jump up on the spot, otherwise he would probably break the ceiling above his head and rush to the third floor, accidentally killing several people, and it would be difficult to control it. He didn't care about other things, but I don't want to bump into the unlucky Zhou Shuling accidentally. The scene where a superhero breaks through a wall, smoke billows from the breach, bricks and stones fly, and the villain looks on in shock. After all, it is just a movie scene. If it were Lu Chang'an who rushed in, how could he just stand there without killing someone first? What's the point of the posture? As a human being, we have to use human methods to solve problems. It is not good to attack and kill people at every turn. It is not good to crush people into sauce. If Zhu Huntang was here at this time, it would come in handy. She called her a cart of breadmen to rush up and beat everyone except Zhou Shuling. There would be nothing wrong. When I want to put her to some use, she is not there. When I am not doing anything, I need to make her presence felt from time to time. As expected, she should be expelled from the Kyushu Fenglai sword sect. Forget it, just continue to solve the problem according to the method notified to Zhou Shuling. Set off firecrackers. Of course you need me to give you guidance from a high position. How can others do it? Lu Chang'an conveniently confiscated the lighter on the table. Don't you remember setting off firecrackers before? Lit the firecrackers, and threw away the lighter. What about the firecrackers exploding in your hands in the puddle? Zhou Dongdong looked up at the ceiling. I remember that lighter was so weird. I think you're being too weird, Lu Chang'an said to Shang Guandandan again. You can continue watching TV. I'll call you up to eat later. Shang Guandandan had already left the electric heating table, walked back and forth in the living room for a few steps, and finally gave up the idea of going upstairs. She sat back on the sofa, hugged her beloved thermos, squinted her eyes and nodded. This matter does not require the Queen Mother to do it herself. After all, it is an outsider who bullies her daughter-in-law, and it is not a fight within the harem. Lu Chang'an went to change his clothes, grew a pair of beards on his lips, and put on a pair of black frame glasses. His whole temperament changed a lot, and he looked much more mature than ordinary college students. This can be regarded as adjusting his appearance. He took a photo and sent it to Zhou Shuling to give her a sense of confidence. If he becomes completely different, he is not afraid of scaring Zhou Shuling. The key is that if he looks like that, he will not give her any familiar feeling in front of Zhou Shuling. If she wants her to cooperate with her acting, it will be too difficult for this little daughter-in-law. When the time comes, it must be as stiff as those who can't memorize their lines and can only pronounce 12,345. Lu Chang'an knew Zhou Shuling very well, because she, like Zhou Dongdong, was relatively stupid, and her way of thinking and thoughts were relatively simple and easy to see through. Lu Chang'an walked out of the bathroom and prepared to go upstairs. Brother Chang'an, your nose hairs have grown out. Zhou Dongdong came out at a trot and was shocked when he saw Lu Chang'an's appearance. Your nose hair grows like this? This is a beard. Lu Chang'an stretched out a finger and poked Zhou Dongdong's nostril. The nose hair grows here, do you understand? I want to grow out too. Zhou Dongdong looked at Lu Chang'an expectantly. Go and find Sister Egg and ask her to help you grow your nose hair. Lu Chang'an glanced at Shang Guandandan, who was giggling on the edge of the sofa, and found something for her to do. Can Sister Egg's nose hair grow back? Yes, go ahead. Lu Chang'an watched Zhou Dongdong go to find Shang Guandandan. He took a look at his appearance with his mobile phone and made sure that his beard did not grow like nose hair. He didn't know what this stupid kid was thinking. Lu Chang'an came upstairs, put his hands in his pockets, and pushed the door with his toes. The door opened, and Lu Chang'an walked in slowly. He looked at the people in the living room with a cold look, and finally his eyes fell on Zhou Shuling's face and nodded. In addition to Zhou Shuling, there was also a rich middle-aged woman in the living room, a lean man with slicked back hair and a small suit, and a middle-aged man with a slight beer belly and a receding hairline. "What are you doing standing still?" Lu Chang'an said to Zhou Shuling. He had already sent a photo to prepare her mentally. Seeing that his appearance was different from usual, he still appeared in a dazed and stupid state. "He's back." Zhou Shuling finally woke up and felt happy. Although he had only been away for 3 or 4 days, seeing him now felt like she had a backbone. She looked a little awkward at first, but when she heard his voice, which was slightly reprimanding, Zhou Shuling felt comfortable. Lu Chang'an ignored the others and sat down directly, pointing to the seat next to him. Zhou Shuling walked over, closed the door, and sat next to Lu Chang'an. "Who are you?" Lu Chang'an's eyes glanced around, and then stared at the lean young man, asking Zhou Dongdong, "Is this the thing that no one likes? Why does it look like a dead person?" "No. I said, who are you?" The middle-aged woman glanced at Lu Chang'an doubtfully, and then looked at Zhou Shuling questioningly. "My name is Lu He, and I am Zhou Dongdong's godfather." Lu Chang'an pointed downstairs. "The house downstairs belongs to my brother Lu Chang'an. It turns out that Xiaoling and Dongdong live in my brother's house." Several people looked at Lu Chang'an with doubts. As soon as this man walked in, he acted like the person who was in charge of the house. His aura was so overwhelming that the atmosphere in the entire living room fell silent. Especially the fierce light in his eyes made it feel like being stared at by him. It seemed like he might swing his fist at me the next moment. "Who are these?" Lu Chang'an didn't introduce himself when he saw the other party, so he patted Zhou Shuling's hand and motioned for her to speak. After he sat down, she seemed to care nothing and just pointed at him. "You have to know how to cooperate. There is a joke that mature women know how to cooperate better than young girls. They know what they are doing when they pat them. This is completely the other way around. They are incomparable to teenage drama queens like An Nuan and Bai Hui." Zhou Shuling was looking at him happily. This man always made Zhou Shuling feel extremely powerful. His mustache looked like a real one. He also named him Lu He and regarded him as her brother. Zhou Shuling quickly introduced that the middle-aged woman was Zhou Shuling's mother, named Maliwa, the younger man was named Xing Hongbo, who was Maliwa's stepson, and the other middle-aged man named Qian Bowen was Xing Hongbo's leader. "It turns out he is Dongdong's godfather. Aren't we all a family? We, today, are here to introduce someone to Xiaoling. We, Director Qian, are in the prime of life. We are usually busy with work and have few people to take care of us. Come on. Xiaoling should also think about her own affairs. Women still have to find a reliable husband so that they can have a place for the rest of their lives," Xing Hongbo said with a smile. He is also a shrewd and experienced person, and he can see it turns out that Zhou Dongdong's godfather is no ordinary person. This man is not his biological brother, nor is he Zhou Dongdong's biological uncle, right? Lu Chang'an ignored him and turned to Zhou Shuling. Zhou Shuling nodded quickly. "Pour me a cup of tea and boil some water to make it." Zhou Shuling got up and went to soak it. She brought it over and whispered, "Don't burn it. I just boiled the water." The expressions on the faces of the people opposite were unspeakable. Why did Zhou Shuling act like his wife this time? Freshly boiled water is best. Are you saying that no one likes Zhou Dongdong? Lu Chang'an looked at Xing Hongbo calmly. I'm not. She's so noisy that she gets in the way of us talking about things. She doesn't want a new father at all. How embarrassing is that for our director Qian? Xing Hongbo does have a point. This is also to facilitate the good thing, excusable circumstances. Lu Chang'an took the cup and smashed it over. The teacup hit his forehead and broke into pieces. Xing Hongbo screamed. The fragments of the cup pierced his forehead. The hot tea poured down, causing Seeing Hungbo to stumble and fall. He was lying on the ground, scratching his face, struggling with fear and anger, unable to get up. I am Zhou Dongdong's godfather. Do you understand what her status is? Are you worthy of my family? Lu Chang'an pointed at Zhou Shuling. When she was living pitifully with her children, where were you? You guys, I didn't think about it for her in the past, and I won't need to do it in the future, so get out of here. You go too far, Maliwa trembled angrily. After she remarried, she would be concerned about her stepson. Her husband's family didn't like her being involved with the previous family, so of course she couldn't interfere too much. Zhou Shuling, but during the holidays, she would also call and send text messages to care about Zhou Shuling and Zhou Dongdong. What else? Now that Zhou Shuling's situation is better, the Seeing family also knows about it. After checking Zhou Shuling's shop, the profits are amazing. Of course, the Seeing family will take a high look. Maliwa also has more confidence in the Seeing family. Isn't it time to repair the relationship? As long as Zhou Shuling marries Qian Bowen, Seeing Hungbo will naturally be taken care of in the work unit. Will her status in the Seeing family, Maliwa, still rise? The extra will be updated later and is being coded. Friends in the group can watch it tomorrow morning. I'm really immortal. Author, Chulian Kui Kan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 714. Zhou Shuling pulled Lu Chang'an's hand and told him not to be angry. She knew that Zhou Dongdong went downstairs to wait for Lu Chang'an to come home, but she had no idea that Seeing Hungbo and Zhou Dongdong said this. It would have been nice if she had hugged Zhou Dongdong aggrievedly before, and the two of them had stubbornly ignored these people. But since what happened with Go Shanhai last time, Zhou Shuling has accepted Lu Chang'an's education, and she will be fine no matter what others say. But why did others say that to Zhou Dongdong? Even someone like Lu Chang'an, who can find fault with anyone he meets, likes his own daughter. Zhou Dongdong is definitely not objectionable. Chang'an never bullies anyone, unless others provoke us first. Zhou Shuling stood up and went to get the broom. Isn't he? Lu He, Qian Bowen, who was pondering the situation, frowned slightly and asked calmly. He is here for a blind date, but he is the leader after all. Seeing the petty affairs of these parents, of course he can't let things go casually if he maintains his identity. Didn't he just say, his younger brother? Zhou Shuling knew that she had spilled the beans and quickly explained, normally when he is not here, his younger brother will help us. His younger brother is also a very good person. If his younger brother is here today and will also beat Seeing Hungbo. Lu Chang'an nodded, and he actually knew how to get through it without stammering and leaving many flaws. He subconsciously underestimated Zhou Shuling. Women are talented in acting. What else are you talking about? He poured hot water on me. Seeing Hungbo finally stood up with Maliwa's help. He felt that his forehead, face, and eyes were all tingling and hot. It hurt, indescribably uncomfortable. Even though he couldn't see clearly which direction Lu He was with his eyes squinted, he still threw away Maliwa's hand in annoyance. Where's the toothpaste? Get some toothpaste and put it on first. Is there any Yunnan Bio? Zhou Shuling swept the floor while peeking at Lu Chang'an. He had the final say whether there was toothpaste or Yunnan Bio at home. What are you thinking about? Lu Chang'an is not a person who always has a bad temper in his heart. When he saw the broken porcelain shard embedded in Seeing Hungbo's forehead, he said in a calm tone, go to the doctor quickly. If I beat him like this, and treat his injuries, isn't that just causing trouble for yourself? After all, he is a very generous person. He can't just kill others casually when he sees them angry, right? That is not in line with his correct and positive attitude towards life under the guidance of the core values of socialism in the new era. Just give Seeing Hungbo a scar on his forehead, which will probably be in the shape of a crescent in the future. There must be many jokes linking Seeing Hungbo to Bao Gong, which will remain fresh in his memory, and he will be warned that he will make progress from now on. Your name is Lu He, right? What did you say? This is Xiao Zhou's house. You are just the child's godfather. Why do you act like you are the one who makes the decision? Qian Bowen said in a serious and reprimanding tone. Young man, don't leave any room when things happen, so that we can meet again in the future. Can I make the decision? Lu Chang'an turned to look at Zhou Shuling. I will listen to you. Zhou Shuling couldn't help but laugh. Isn't this acting? Of course she had to look like a sweet little daughter-in-law. Qian Bowen was speechless for a moment, patted his thigh, said yes, and made a move to leave, not wanting to swim in this muddy water. Director Qian, don't leave, let me take care of you. Maliwa quickly grabbed Qian Bowen. She knew that after Qian Bowen left, would Xing Hongbo still want to be taken care of in the unit? He was afraid that the ordinary benefits of the work unit would not be available to him, so why didn't she, Maliwa, receive sarcastic comments and looks at her in the Xing family? Qian Bowen reluctantly sat down, and when he saw Xing Hongbo moving next to him, looking like he was expecting Qian Bowen to prevail, he turned around in disgust. If he really hoped that this blind date would come true, he would have walked away long ago. Any man with some ability doesn't have to worry about finding a woman, no matter how old he is. The problem is that young and beautiful women like Zhou Shuling are really rare. Men always like women who are younger than themselves, not to mention that the Zhou Shuling in front of her is round and round. She is in the state of a woman who has just ripened a peach. She will not be overripe and greasy with juice overflowing, nor will she be like a first ripened woman with a slight fluff. Green and hard. Especially the figure line, it is impossible to draw such a beautiful and graceful shape. The figure wrapped in a red woolen skirt makes men unable to take their eyes away. The fair skin makes people unable to help but think of the county sand fluttering down a few days ago. The color of the snow that accumulated all night, the moving eyes that a beautiful woman must have, are also full of spring color. Especially when she looked at Lu He, Qian Bowen always felt that if every time she went home, she would see such a beautiful woman at home. A woman looking at herself with such a look should have no regrets about being a man. Hongbo, don't get angry first. Maliwa comforted Xing Hongbo first, even though Xing Hongbo had no intention of rushing up and fighting Lu He. Maliwa also knew Xing Hongbo's temperament. She heard from Xing Hongbo's father that when he was studying, Xing Hongbo was often bullied by a tall classmate. Faced with the tall and muscular young man in front of him, it was impossible for him to rush up and fight with him. Take it out. You must give me an explanation. Xing Hongbo glared at Maliwa. Sure. Lu Chang'an looked at Maliwa. Maliwa must have started a new family very early, and Zhou Shuling's temperament probably followed that of her father. Lu He, right? You are just Dongdong's godfather. I am Xiaoling's biological mother, and I can still make the decision for her. Don't get involved in today's matter. This is our family matter. Maliwa sat down. He came down and took off the red silk gloves on his palms. For Xiaoling's sake, if you leave now, we can temporarily not hold you responsible for intentionally hurting others. Xing Hongbo pressed his forehead and felt severe pain immediately. He just looked at Qian Bowen next to him with a bad face and suppressed his words. Although the tea is boiling hot, it is not boiling water after all. Splashing it in the air will dissipate a lot of the temperature. This is very different from being directly scalded by boiling water. To be honest, Xing Hongbo's head was buzzing now that the teacup was hit on his forehead. Mom, Lu He is Dongdong's godfather, and we are a family. When I bought a house, he took 200,000, and later he opened a breakfast stall with me. Slowly we saved enough money to open it now. Shop, now we are going to open a branch, which is also a partnership. Zhou Shuling glanced at Lu Chang'an with soft eyes. Her cheeks were slightly hot but her expression was determined. If you want him not to interfere with my affairs, then I will never agree. Maliwa was at a loss for words. She opened her mouth but felt that she had lost her momentum. In Maliwa's view, this is the reality. Those who can spend money have the confidence and weight to speak. It seems that Zhou Shuling's current life and income are inseparable. The person in front of her, Maliwa, even if she acted like a mother, she would not have the confidence to suppress Lu He from interfering with Zhou Shuling's affairs. In order to fully integrate into the Xing family these years, Maliwa has not cared about this place, but she can't be blamed. She also has her own life to manage in the next life, right? Zhou Shuling followed her father, and her father died early. Isn't it Maliwa's fault? Let's go. Don't make Xiaoling and Dongdong angry in the future. I'll let you go. Lu Chang'an looked at the people beside her who were weak on the outside but working hard on the inside. She dragged herself and the stupid child along, bumping and bumping away. The woman who came over sighed softly, there are so many hardships in the world, it's not easy for Xiaoling, but she doesn't need anyone's sympathy. Whether you can help or I can't help, she can survive, it's just that there is a hard time between people. It's meaningless to have relationships that are not emotionally adequate. In the future, Xiaoling doesn't need to be related to the Xing family, and there's no need to call her Uncle Dongdong. As a mother, you can come and see me if you want, but judging from your personality, you are also very cold and selfish. Don't play any drama about repairing the relationship between mother and daughter. Lu Chang'an saw that Jian Bowen seemed to have something to say, so he took out his mobile phone and took a few photos of Jian Bowen. And you, don't be a toad and want to eat swan meat. I think you are also a small leader. Believe it or not, I will send a photo of you wearing a Hermes belt and a designer watch to report you. Jian Bowen was a little panicked. He was wearing a famous brand today to show his strength, but how could he have expected to meet such a person? A naked threat with no skills or elegance at all. Not that a few photos can definitely change him, but who is not afraid of such trouble? This guy seems to have a little money. What if he finds someone to promote and hype it up, and expose Jian Bowen to public opinion? I'm not a leader, I'm a businessman. I earned it myself. After Jian Bowen finished speaking, he glared at Xing Hongbo and left angrily. Oh, that's good. Jian Bowen left, and Lu Chang'an nodded. It turned out to be a misunderstanding. If he wasn't the leader, then he wouldn't violate the core values of socialism and wouldn't report it. Mom, you guys should go too, Zhou Shuling said to Maliwa and Xing Hongbo. She was a little anxious and went to the kitchen to cook. Knowing that Lu Chang'an was coming back, they must have gathered together for a big meal today at noon. Zhou Shuling went to the kitchen early in the morning and bought a lot of fresh vegetables. If she doesn't deal with them now, Lu Chang'an will have to pick and choose again later. She doesn't like this. It's fresh, it wasn't cooked at the right time, and so on. Then Zhou Shuling would be extremely aggrieved. Okay, then, let's do it. Maliwa saw Jian Bowen leaving, and her heart moved slightly. It seems that Zhou Shuling will not offend Lu He for her, not to mention that Zhou Shuling is not what she used to be. I have to repair the relationship in the future. I can still be a little tougher with the Xing family, but I have to finish this matter well today, and I can't let Xing Hongbo be scalded by hot water in vain. Xiaoling, give it to your brother 10,000 yuan, firstly, even if Hongbo is relieved, secondly, it's normal for a sister to send a red envelope during the Chinese New Year. 10,000 yuan, you just opened your mouth. Do you know how many bowls of noodles we will sell for 10,000 yuan? How many chicken drumsticks? How many big meat buns? Lu Chang'an sneered, get out, you don't have a penny. Maliwa couldn't lose her face, let alone Xing Hongbo. The two men pointed at Lu Chang'an with trembling hands and left without saying a word. Let me get you some meat buns to take back. Zhou Shuling hurriedly chased after her. She is a person who easily softens her heart when she has the upper hand. Mom, don't get angry. He is a straightforward person who likes to tell the truth. In fact, he is a very nice person. I gave birth to your daughter in vain. Maliwa saw that Zhou Shuling was as stupid and careless as her father, and she was furious and hurried downstairs. Zhou Shuling had no choice but to come back. Seeing Lu Chang'an drinking a little cold tea, she quickly added hot water to him and said apologetically, "I'm troubling you again, otherwise I wouldn't know how to send them away today. Why are you so polite?" Lu Chang'an touched his beard and asked an important question, "Do you think my beard looks like nose hair?" "It's not like nose hairs, it just looks a bit awkward." "Just tear it off." Zhou Shuling stretched out her hand to pull Lu Chang'an's beard. She still liked his original appearance. He looked familiar and comfortable. She was still most accustomed to his normal facial features. He made various expressions that pointed his nose at her and pointed his eyes at her. "Don't tear it apart, I am Lu He today, and this is my true body." Lu Chang'an turned to avoid it. Zhou Shuling had already touched his face. She stretched out her hand and pulled it off, but couldn't pull it off at all. She leaned over and pulled it off again. However, she stepped on a piece of broken porcelain from the cup that had not been cleaned just now. She slipped and fell into Lu Chang'an's arms. Lu Chang'an held her slender waist, supported her hips, frowned and said, "What are you making trouble about? Hey, I actually lost a little weight, just my waist." Zhou Shuling was a little blushing, but after all, she sat in his arms. She quickly stood up and said with some joy, "I haven't had much dinner in the past few days. Is my waist a little thinner? I measured it last night." Lu Chang'an nodded, "Let's go cook. I'll go get those two little animals to feed them." "Yeah." Lu Chang'an went downstairs, and Zhou Shuling was also kind-hearted and sent Maliwa away. She didn't seem to have much sighs and lamentations about self-pity and self-love, sighing about the indifference of family affection and the impact of practical operations on her emotions. But it's quite cute. It's probably because she has such a heartless personality that she still retains that simple, charming, and cute look. Of course, Lu Chang'an had nothing to express. He went to the bathroom to clean up his beard, and then went downstairs to find Zhou Dongdong and Shang Guandandan. All kinds of requests.